Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's March 11th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And you can see we opened lower, traded lower. We actually traded through the measured move and closed back inside it. So will we see a reversal now, or at least a correction of some kind? I mean, we are severely oversold here. This market's way oversold. So at some point, it's going to bounce, and when it does, it's probably going to bounce strongly. And so just be prepared for that. Wouldn't surprise me if we get a huge rally one day here before the week's up. We may not. I could be wrong, but just reading the chart here, you can see. I mean, we're way below this oversold line, and rarely do you get that far below. You can see here we bounced, here we bounced, here we bounced. In the past is basically what I'm trying to show you here. Here we bounced right off of it. Here we went a little lower, a good bit lower, and you can see that rally that rocketed out of there and led to a new rally. Same thing here. We got below it and then we rallied. So generally you don't go that far below it. Now we did here, but it was only for about 3 trading days and then we rocketed out of there. Um, I mean, we've been below it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tomorrow will be 7 trading days, so it's kind of unusual. It is what it is. We'll see. I really don't see any. Maybe this is more like this. So maybe we've got an overshoot here. It's hard to say if we've got an overshoot. Maybe not. It still looks like that could fit. So we may not have an overshoot. So we may get a break and move to a new low, and then it may take off. Who knows? All I can tell you is what the chart's saying, and you can see how tight these things are getting. They're almost trying to turn into one line, and prices have been way below that oversold line for days now, a week of trading or more. So at some point, it's going to bounce, and it's hard to call that. It's hard to know when, but when it does, it's probably going to bounce fairly strongly. And it may just be temporary strong bounce, but I mean, even in very strong bearish markets, you get these big time rallies. So uh, people start buying, and it leads to more buying, and then people start profit taking, then trying to lock in profits, and so more buying comes in, and it just leads to these big, huge rallies. So be prepared for that possibility to come. I'm leaning heavily towards it being this oversold for this long. When we get a bounce, it's probably going to pop. So we'll see. But that's just, based on my experience, that's what I'm expecting at some point. Will it happen? Again, we'll just have to see. But let's flip over to the 2,000 tick chart. It's pretty much a range day. We did break lower. There was a there. Well, let's just flip over the chart, then I'll explain it. Okay, here's our chart. You can see that we had a sideways here, but we also had a channel working down, and so we had to kind of fight it out here. We did get a break of the channel and a couple of legs down to a new low, and it looks pretty much like a measured move. I don't know if we quite got a measured move, but it was close. And then we failed and bounced back into the range, and the range continued for the rest of the day. We actually had a little failed break out the top. Maybe the range it turns out to be a little wider in the end. Probably something like that. Yeah, and that does fit really well across there. So that's uh, probably more like it in the end. So, but you can see it's just a range day, and we closed off the lows where we broke lower. And this line here is pretty much that line on the daily chart, I think, right around 55.60. And you see where we broke lower and it failed, and we came back. So actually, that line may be a little higher. Let me just flip over there and look and see exactly where that line is. Okay, you can see that line is at 55.67, so pretty close to 5,600. Just slightly below 5,600. It's actually at 55.68. So, and we come back over here. Let's put our 55.68. Well, you know, it's almost right in there. So that line is a little bit higher, maybe right in here. So not much difference between where the bottom of the range is. I mean, you can see we're bouncing all across in there. It looks like most of the bounces came right around 56.62 or so there, 56.61.75. So that's pretty much the lows on the daily, or the support, the measured move. So no surprise that we broke lower and failed and came back in the range here. But you can see this range, I'm sorry, this channel here played out. We got the break, a couple of legs to a new low, and then it rallied out of there. And we found resistance at the highs and turned back down again. So there it is. A little more difficult today. Not quite the trading day we had yesterday. But there it is. Let's zoom in here. We'll work through the trades and then we'll wrap this day up. And we'll see what tomorrow brings. 7 o'clock came right in here somewhere. I think it was this bar here. Yep, right there. Too bad that wasn't a good signal bar because you might have taken that on a failed breakout, but you don't really get a good enough signal bar there, and then that's just a first entry. Now, I will say there's a close and a new high all in one there, but it's still just a first entry, and that's a pretty strong rally, so it could still push up. I'm not crazy about taking that. Too choppy, and then we're just working out. And finally, you get a second entry here, but we don't have the new high in place. You might say, okay, well, that's a lower high. I don't know if it would have worked if you took it, but you can clearly see there's sideways, and that looks like congestion too, so that's another reason to be careful. Let's just see if that would have worked. I think it's going to be shy. It's just like a 4 ticks there is what it looks like. But now you bust up and make your new high, and so you got a second entry short followed by a new high and a triple test. So I like entering it now right here. I mean, if you push that all the way to the right side of the chart so you can see what it would have looked like in real time, it looks congested and we don't have a new high yet. So even though it's a second entry, it'll probably fail on you, or it could fail on you. So you got to be real careful with it. If you took it, you probably got stopped out there. But if you waited to see if it made a new high, then you got the triple test, and then you had a nice easy trade. Now you didn't get a big time runner, but you'd be surprised that move doesn't look like much. But let's just see. It's almost 8. It is 8 points. So you could have easily got 4 or 5 points runners, 6 points runners out of it. If you just followed your stop, you got at least three out of it. So depends on how you would play it. But you do get your break here and a couple of legs down. And you can see that's pretty much a perfect 2 measured legs, and then it bounces. Unfortunately, you don't get a setup down here. You don't get a high or low. You don't get anything. You just get a big run up, close outside, move to a new high, and then it ticks higher here and fails and turns down. So when it comes past those 2 bars right there, it triggers a second entry. I would wait for this to close, and then it doesn't tick below it. It gives you a 2-bar matching highs. So maybe you still go short there. I left it green. I'm not crazy about it, but you obviously got a trap up here. So will it follow through? We'll see, and it does eventually. And then it bounces and comes back. And now I think you can argue you got a triple test right here. So it went up, turned back down, came back up. I usually like to see some space in there, but I think that's good enough to say you've bounced there a couple of times, triple times. And here you got to close outside new high as well. And there is a hidden second entry in there. So that far away from the EMA, I say take that one. Then it bounces, comes back and breaks out higher, and unfortunately, it does give you a nice lower high here with a double top, and maybe you would have taken that. And there's even a possible reversal here. It's on the wrong side of the EMA, but you might have taken either one of those, but it went into the news period. There's Jolt jobs this morning at 9 o'clock, and so by 10 minutes till, I say you can't take any more trades. And you can see the big volatility that happens here. And really by a few minutes after 9, we're trying to take it all back. And there's a higher low right there. And I think you, that far away from the EMA, I think you're great to take that higher low. And then there's a first entry, turns back down. There's a second entry when it breaks above that, but I don't think the signal bar is good enough. But you get to close outside, move to a new high, and then you get a lower high right here. I like going short there. The signal bar is not perfect, so I did mark that green, but I tend to like that one. First entry, first entry. There is a second entry here, but that's your signal bar. Look how congested that is right into the EMA. Just sit tight. It turns out to be a great move, but it's not a good setup, so just sit tight. Here you're working up, close outside. It tries to make a new high and gives you a lower high. And technically, I believe it's a third entry because I think it ticks lower right there. So I think that's first entry, second entry, and then a lower high. But I don't like that signal bar. And then you're just kind of chopping lower there. Nothing you can take. And you come down here, and there's no rejection here. You might say, okay, there's a failed break lower there, but it closes below that, and you're still trending lower, so I think you got to wait. And finally, it makes another low, and it does give you a higher low here, and it breaks higher on that higher low. But look, that looks sideways and congested, but that's probably okay because you're way below the EMA, and prices are probably going to rally. So if you recognize that, you might enter on that one. I'll go ahead and mark it green. I don't think it's worth being red because it is a little congested, but if you understand what's going on there, the reason it starts getting congested like that, you're way away from the EMA, you've had a failed break lower, and the momentum is running out and the buyers are starting to come in and they just hadn't had enough momentum. But you usually want to see rejection, and that's not rejection. So again, if you understand what's going on there, maybe you take that one. But here you trend up. It looks like you get a little overshoot right there, but it leads to a break and it moves to a new high. Now somebody asked me about that one. If you take that, you're probably asking for trouble. I believe there was still enough room to get out. And you can see there's 7 ticks, so there's more than enough. There's an extra tick to get out. And I asked him, I said, he said he took a loser because he tried to go for more ticks. And I'll tell you, people are there's always somebody on the internet that knows more, that tells you should go for more. And if you want to go for more, go for more. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to have more losers. If he would have followed the rules and tried to scalp out with 4 ticks, the fact that he was a little early wouldn't have hurt him at all. He'd have still scalped out. No, he wouldn't have got a runner, but you wouldn't expect to get one down here. I wouldn't take an early trade down here at all because you just bottomed out down here. Or a possibility that you did because it could be a range. So, if you took that and followed the rules, it worked. If you took it and you didn't follow the rules and you try to get more out of your trades, then you had a loser. That's all I can tell you. And I'm just telling you, that's why I don't go for more ticks. I try to get it on a runner. If we're in a big downtrend, but I probably wouldn't even try for a runner here if I tried to enter there. I'd just try for the scalp because it could be all you get is back to the EMA maybe, and it may run another leg higher. It didn't even get back to the EMA and it ran another leg higher, and then it turned down and went right where you probably think it's going to go to try to make a retest. But guess what? It finds support there and bounces. What you had to be worried about to begin with. So, if you want to try to go for more ticks because somebody else said they were having success doing that, more power to you. But I'll just tell you, I don't go for more ticks. If I think it's going to go further because of the volatility, I'm going to try to get it on the runner. That's the whole idea behind the scalp and run, is to try to make sure you don't have a loser, make sure you get paid something, and then the runner would be gravy. Now, if you're just trading one contract, you don't have any choice. And if you're just trading one contract, just scalp out. Make sure you get paid every trade. Don't take a loser. If you try to go for more, you're just going to take more losers. I'm tell you right up straight front, you're going to take more losers. Now, yeah, you might get an extra point here and there, but you're going to wipe it out with extra losers. So you're just going to spin your wheels. So follow the rules. I don't know any plainer way to say it. Follow the rules. These trades are designed to get 4 ticks. Sure, when the volatility is high, sometimes you can get more, but not always. Here's a good example of a strong volatility down trade with I would call that a second entry short with it. And this is all played out. You had an overshoot, you had a break, you had a new high. Only thing you didn't get was your second leg up, which came here. So entering there is always going to be a little risky, but if you like the trade, but if you just followed the rules and scalped out, you don't have a loser there. I bet you there were a ton of losers right there because people tried to go for more. And there'll be some that scalped out and got a winning trade there. If you waited for the second entry, the 2 legs up, you didn't get an entry. But that's okay, because there'll be another entry that comes along in a little bit that works out great. And so here we are, we're running up, and we just reverse. Why? I mean, you can see there's a close outside there. Is it convincing enough? Not in my book. I would wait. You don't really get a setup to go short anyway, and then you're running down, and you get another failed breakout. Would I take that? No, because there's no break of this channel, and it could touch and turn lower. But here you get the break. You get a first entry, pulls back. You get a second entry short, and notice on the way up, you get a close outside a new high, all in one bar with a big bearish bar. So if you want to be a little aggressive, you might enter there. It is a double top as well. So maybe you enter there, but I'd wait to see if I got a second entry in a lower high, and that comes right here, and you still have room to scalp out. But you want to be cognizant of that line. If it takes more than that to get out, don't enter the trade. Or if you're going to try to get more than 4 ticks, you better make sure whatever you're trying to get, you got room to get out right there, because it could bounce. And sure enough, it bounces right there. So but that's a great second entry with a nice signal bar, and it doesn't look like much, but there's probably a lot of points there. I mean, you basically could have got easily get your scalp. And if you went for more, you might have got 2 or 3 points, as long as you exited before you got to that line. If you exit before you get to that line, you got a little more, but I would have only tried to get those on the runner. And if I entered there, I probably would have moved my runner. If I'm going to try to get runners, which I probably wouldn't because we're so close to this support. If I was going to put my exit 1 tick above that line. And you would, if that line's sitting there at, I'm not sure what that line's at. Can you tell there? It's hard to say. But anyway, whatever that line is at, I would have had my buy stop a tick above that if I enter here and try to take a runner, which I probably wouldn't anyway. And you see that's what rejection looks like. The initial bar is not good enough to enter. It is a second entry, but it just takes off and it keeps going. That's rejection. That's what rejection looks like. Too bad we didn't get a signal bar here on a second entry. But we didn't. And it just goes without us. It does bounce right off of well, actually I started that trend line right there, so you hadn't had it confirmed yet, so you wouldn't have a trend line there yet. And it takes off, and it's just giving you first entries all the way up, and then we just start working sideways. But there is a trend channel up here, break, and we tried to go higher 3 times. You get a triple test there. You can tell we're working sideways. I like going short there. Not enough room there. That one's iffy too. Not really enough room. Certainly not enough room there. Now you do have enough room here on the, it's just going back and forth. So when you get a setup that with room to scalp out, up or down, take it. There's one going up. This one you don't have room. Here you get a breakout that does bounce off the key entry point, but the only bar that you might use were these two, and it never breaks above it. This one's too bearish. Now you do get a higher low here, but you'd have to wait till that closes. And it does. I think that bar is probably okay, and it is off of this key entry point, and you do have room to scalp out. I didn't mark that one, but that should at least be green. I think you're fine going long there. You can see you'd go long one tick above that, or maybe you let it break above and drop a limit order in there and see if you get filled. But sometimes being conservative, you miss the trade, and you see there's almost 4 points there. Three points and 3 ticks. And then it turns down. Now you get a second entry here, and notice it turns down off that trend line. So you got 2 trend lines battling it out, and that's really what causes this sideways stuff. So I like going short right there. Again, I marked it green because you're not quite back to the high, but I think you could argue you're off that trend line, and you might even argue for that to be red. Just because I marked one green, somebody sent me an email yesterday and said, well, I took this trade and thought it was perfect, and you marked it green. Well, there were some reasons I marked it green, and I explained those to him. It wasn't but still, you might argue it was close to being red. It just wasn't quite red for different reasons. And here I'd say it's not quite red because if the stem would have went all the way through and it closed back inside, if the stem touched that and turned down, I'd probably say, okay, let's go ahead and make it red but it's probably going to try to go higher one more time. And you see it did. It tried to go higher one more time, but it couldn't breach that trend line, and then it turns down. But you didn't get a setup then. You didn't really get a lower high until way down here, and you can't enter there. And then it reverses and comes back. And I didn't draw it, but there's a trend line working up. Now there's no break of this one and new high, but it tries to go higher and just makes a lower high right there. So once again, you're trading the range. Just go short. It comes down here and it fails out and it turns back up. I mean, this is basically a triple test here. Just go long right there, and that one takes off. They failed it out the bottom 3 times before they could get it out the top, and then look at it rock it up, and then it fails out the top. That looks a little too congested. I'd be afraid to enter there. It ends up moving down pretty quick. But notice right here, we come back, we turn down, we turn back up, and we go short again. There's a second entry short, a triple test of this. Maybe you could even argue I don't know if I'd call that a test, maybe. But there's definitely 1, 2, 3 triple tests there. I like that one because it's going to fail, and that's your measured move line right across there that you just tested 3 times. So it's probably going to turn back down. As long as you got room to get out before this support resistance line that could act as support. It really did, and the midlines acted as support twice, but you're making a lower high again. And again, there's no setup there, so you can't go short there. And it's a nice move down, but there's no setup. You get your close outside. Again, no setup to go short. And it just kind of works down first entries. Now, notice here you did get your close outside this channel and a couple of legs to a new low, and you can see those 2 legs. Perfect measured move, actually. And then it bounces and gives you a higher low. You might even consider entering. If it had a really good signal bar, maybe you go long there. But you're being a little risky. You want a sure thing. Wait, and you get a higher low right here with a nice signal bar. Just go long right there. It has a reversal, but it doesn't set up properly. This is a failure, but it sets up on the wrong side. It does close above, so if it broke above that, it's another possibility. But just wait. You'll get a better trade if you just wait. And then we start going sideways, and you get a nice setup here with room to scalp out. Take it. This one's not a good enough signal bar. This one's probably good enough, but it closes outside. So, and you see what happens. It bounces one more time. And it does give you this one that closes back inside. I didn't mark it. It is off that trend line. But and we still don't quite have a new low after the break. So, where was it? So right here, you might take that. It's a little congested. It's above the EMA, but when you're working sideways, but you can clearly see the close outside of this channel, and there's two legs up there too with that last little push. So you might take that trade. And it takes off. You come back and you make a lower high here. It's just a first entry, and there's no close outside on this corrective green channel here that I didn't mark green, but let's just do that so it makes sense. So this is a trend on its own here, and there's no close outside because it turns down a lower high off that trend line. I gave it a green, and it would have worked, but it's still a little aggressive because it could break and turn up one more time and just enough to stop you out and then make a lower high. And so you got to be careful there. This is all too sideways. We're dropping down here, just a first entry. Oh, this is side. Now you're back in the range again. Now you might have considered going long here, but you're still making lower highs and lower lows, and so it's dangerous to go long just yet. But I do like going short with the trend right off the EMA, and at least it tested that upper side 3 times. Quick, easy scalp. Comes back, and you get a breakout here, but it's the first close outside that trend line. I like taking that one. If it breaks lower there, you do get a close outside and new high. It's just a first entry, but it's a failed break out of this, and this channel does play out. So I like that one. You do get a lower high here that would have been a good setup if it had a good signal bar, but it doesn't. And then it drops on down, and then we have made a new low now. If you come back over here, you can see we're much lower than the original low before we got the break of that channel. And you get a 1, 2, 3 triple test with a higher low here. I like going long there. Quick, easy scalp. You could have got a runner there if you tried. And this is where you need to try to pick up a runner, because a lot of times these are important lows. And you see that moved almost 9 points. So you wouldn't have got a huge runner, but you would have got one. And then it works its way all the way back down here. This one is tempting. But right at that point, you really only have a double test across there. But when it makes a higher, and it's plus you're making lower highs and lower lows pretty much. So you need a higher low or a triple test, and you get both of those at once with this bar here. And you might even argue that these both test this lower line again. If you'd entered here, it still works because you don't get stopped out on this one. But I would have waited to this one to enter. So maybe you mark this other one green. I mean, you might could argue that there's another test of that line, but you see it doesn't quite take off yet until it makes a higher low. And then boom, and that's rejection again. Look at it go. So maybe you enter that one. If you did, it works. You would have had to maybe ride this out, but it still works. Runs up. Close outside, it attempts to make a new high. You don't really get a setup. You do get a lower high here, but I think that's moved too far and it's right into the EMA. It takes on off, but I think you got to wait. And then you get a second entry down here. Now you get the close outside of this down channel, a new low. It's clearly a second entry long, way away from the EMA, and it's also a double bottom. It's not a triple test, but it's a double bottom. This one's close to being green. But I like it. I think being that far, you're probably going to snap back. And plus, you've played out down here, most likely. And this is about a 50% pullback. And so it's probably going to at least come back to the EMA, even if it's going to go lower. But that'd be a good spot. It might bounce. And it finally makes a higher low here. Unfortunately, it didn't break higher on that higher low. And it has moved a little bit. But I probably would say go long on that higher low if it would have broke above it, but it doesn't. It gives you this bar, and then it breaks above that one, and you just can't enter on that, and it takes off. And that's just a first entry. First entry. Yeah, it looks like a high or low, but it's moved way too far, and it's just a first entry. And then you're chopping sideways. I marked this one here. Um, you'd already broken out, and then you break out again, and you make that high or low there, and you still don't have a new high after the close outside of this green channel, and that's a pretty good move. I mean, we've had a pretty good move up here. So maybe you take that. It's probably going to shoot to a new high. You don't know that it's going to run that strongly, but it does. And then it starts working lower again. I don't see any reason to go short just yet until you get this move up and a close outside new high, and it also makes a triple test there and a second entry short with a nice signal bar, and you got plenty of room to test this new low. And guess what? It comes down here and boom, it bounces right there again with a 1, 2, 3 triple test. So I like going long just to try to get another scalp, and it takes off. I'm sorry, I had an interruption there. But yeah, triple test and boom, it takes off. I don't see anything else up here. There is a second entry right here, but there's no close outside of this and new high yet. And you really already have a close outside here and a new high. But a lot of times, a second, a two-legged move after a break will lead to another trend. And there's a good chance, too, we're headed up here. But I just don't think that signal bar is good enough. I think you need a higher low, and you don't get one. It just takes off. And then it turns down. There is a lower high here, but I'm not crazy about it either. It's moved all the way to the EMA and bounced, and now there's not much room in there. And you see how it kind of bounces before it goes lower. This probably was a trap here, so you might trade that as a reversal. It's not ideal, but it does close on the other side. You want it to come back and test it from the other side, kind of like it does here. But notice you get your close outside. I mean, you get your correction, which is a close outside of this one, and then it tries to move to a new high and fails and gives you a second entry short. I marked that one red, but looking at it now, it looks really congested. But it pushes down and comes back and gives you a triple test across there, which I don't know why I don't have it marked. So you definitely want to go short there on that move down. Technically, that's the second entry short right there, and it's probably why I marked it. But it does look a little congested. I mean, you could argue too. There's already a triple test. So between the triple test and the second entry short, I'm gonna leave it red, but it's real close to being green. And then when it comes back here, definitely enter, and it just takes off, and then it bounces. Now because you got a double top right here, you could argue that maybe there's two legs down. It's a long way down anyway, plus you have your break and a move to a new low. So maybe you try to ride that back. Again, I think you're better off to wait on a higher low, and you don't get one. And it runs up, close outside, a couple of moves to a new high. Again, this one is tempting. It's like a first, second, third entry though, but you do have your close outside and a new high, and it does make a double top. The problem is it just doesn't quite get up there where this one did. It does turn down off the high of the range, but I'd kind of adjusted that right before we started because we made these newer highs across here. But I think you might consider that one. And then this is a lower high, but it just looks so congested. Now you don't have much room there. And you see how it stalls. It doesn't stop you out, but it could. And that's the concern. And it does push on through. And then it pulls back, and it does give you a good failure here. Notice that new high. I mean, that's basically a double top. So first entry, and then second entry long. And if it breaks below that, it fails. The only reason I didn't make that one red is because you're going short at maybe a double bottom there. and you're going short at the low of a move, which is never a good idea. And you see how it breaks lower and fails temporarily and then comes back and gives you another lower high before it goes on. And that's what you're concerned about there. And that's why I marked it green, because I was afraid it would bounce. And it tries, but it just doesn't wasn't able to. And it's because we're at the top of the range. And here you get a couple legs up, and you can see right there. I don't know if that's. I mean, it's hard to say that's a convincing close outside. I'm not even sure I've got it drawn right. Maybe it's more like that, which I think it is. Um, so there's a second entry short there, but you see what happens. Fails. And that's why you don't just take a second entry short. You gotta let these things play out. And you get the close outside, and then it can't even work higher there. It comes down, makes a new low. That one's tempting. If it was a second entry, I'd probably say take it, because that does look like rejection. And you get a close outside here, tries to make a new high, makes another leg down, and then it does make a new high before it goes lower again. But that's after 230, so I don't think you want to go short right there at 230 on a first entry. And there it is. Crazy volatility again. We had a really good high volatility day yesterday that was a lot easier trading. And today it was not so easy because you get all these reversals. But it's because it's a range day. If you find your range highs and lows, it'll help you because you get an idea where it's going to bounce. So, or where it's going to turn. It's going to bounce down here and it's going to turn up here. Early on, I had it across here, and you see it did turn there once before it went higher, and then it starts turning a little higher there, and that's why I moved that up some. But are we bottoming out here, or is this just some momentary consolidation because we've dropped so far so fast already? It's hard to say, but this is almost a 40-minute chart lesson, so I'm going to wrap it up and call it a day, and we'll come back tomorrow and we'll see what transpires tomorrow. But are we going to get that bounce or not? It's really hard to know and say, because these things can stay oversold longer than you would think they could. But I showed you at the beginning of the chart lesson, this one stayed oversold a lot longer than they normally do. So when it does bounce, it's probably going to pop pretty strongly, is my guess. And again, nothing's ever 100% in trading, and so we could keep going lower and maybe a while, or we might get some kind of little attempt at a rally that fails and the thing goes straight down again. So whatever it does, we're going to follow the price action, and we're going to do what the price action tells us. But I'm just telling you based on my experience and what the daily chart's showing, what I'm expecting based on my experience watching that chart and watching that those envelope bands. And so we'll see. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.